Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of today's SOPP. Today, we have our guest, Lorrie Wick, who's running for county commissioner here in Douglas County again. And again, we're just going to keep it like last time, super, super chill, super brief, and probably talk about, some of the news that's happening in today's Southern Oregon atmosphere. So, we'll take this smooth and easy and, well, who are you and why are you running, Lori?
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me here tonight. And a little bit about who I am is that I am a person who has dedicated my um career in working for human services work, and I've worked up in my career from doing uh, a lot of like all of a sudden I got nervous here. A lot of kind of direct services in crisis and shelter work and all kinds of human trafficking and domestic violence and sexual assault. A lot of people want me to mention that type of work that I've done. I've also worked a lot in child abuse prevention in people's homes and talking about very difficult family issues, all the issues that you can imagine that um, and all the challenges that families deal with from in all socioeconomic classes, from people that have been living in poverty to people that have been living with wealth. So all kinds of people have been in my life, have touched my heart, and along the way, I've experienced a lot of challenges with that. And I've also worked on the other side of it with the administrative parts of moving grants and programs and county and state and federal funds forward on councils and working with coalitions and um, bodies and counties and collaboratively working to move that forward. So that's been a big part of my career is collaboration, because it's very difficult when you're working with people to try to be progressive in moving family issues or funding forward in trying to end um, problems and systemic problems in society. And so I've been on the boots on the ground level, and I've also been behind the closed doors working with executive leaders as I was an executive leader doing that work myself. Along the way, I've been working in that type of work for over 20 years.
Awesome. Well, thank you for running. I mean, I really, no, we appreciate it because, as a longtime Douglas County resident, we've seen some of the mismanagement of the county. So my next question for you is, why did you choose to run this year, and why did you choose to run for the position you're running for, which is position two against Tim Freeman, if I'm not mistaken, or Tom Kress?
Oh, it's position one, and it is for Tom Kress. And I did change my positions around, and I initially was gonna move for Tom Kress, and I really was a little concerned because I realized I need to run my own campaign and went back to Tom Kress. I was trying to not double up when I heard somebody else was going to run against the same candidate. And so I just went back to my original, and that was Tom Kress. So that's why I changed. And so I went with that. And why I'm running is I feel really strongly that there's this movement of people in power and positions of power that aren't handling that haven't been trained in leadership, that they've moved up in these positions and are maybe not trained in looking out for the greater good of groups and moving and working in collaborative situations, or even trained and or experienced at facilitating marginalized voices or including people. And we the people when you're governing and representing the people in the system. And I think one example is our county commissioners took off the public comments section off the agenda, and it's one example of not valuing people's voices. And that's something that is a value of mine that is ingrained in my work and my career and who I am as a person. And and we need to do that. And when people are moving forward in leadership because they want the power, then it's for their own opportunities versus trying to move forward a cause for the greater good of moving forward as a society, or a issue, or addressing a challenge. And that is something that I've not only done in practice but also in education. I've extensively been in trainings in these different areas on top of formal education, to be able to be very good at leadership and not just move up and get elected because I'm popular, and or presenting myself in a certain way that people like me because of my personality. Even though I like to be likable, I'm also good at what I do. And so my motivation isn't over wanting to be a leader to make decisions because I'm the boss. It's because I want to be the collaborative person in that position to be able to maximize opportunities for the people, instead of just making the first choice that looks good, that maybe like a lot of handshake deals behind the scenes happen, or making loophole deals happen, um, just to make that happen for certain people to gain advantage. And I hear and understand that has happened, and does happen when people get comfortable in their positions of power in government. And that's partly why there's term limits. And because when people don't have checks and balances in place, and good leaders, when you're disciplined and have been trained, have those checks and balances in place. But if you don't have that, then you can become corrupt. And it's really important. That's one of the reasons why the term limits, because you get comfortable in those positions of power. And there's the reason why change needs to happen. So those are the reasons why I want to leverage my skills and abilities, and also challenge that there should be term limits. And when people get comfortable in their positions of power versus really trying to bring opportunities and hungry for change and lifting up and maximizing resources to our um, county, instead of just a few people maximizing their own opportunities.
Well, and I guess you kind of started going into it, but that leads into my next question too, which is like, I know candidates have their specific pillars or things they want to address once they're elected. And, God willing, you're going to be elected because we need change at the county leadership. So, what's some of the stuff that you wanted to address or, that has been so upfront that, you have to look into it once you finally get into office?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, Kevin. Definitely key areas in this administration. Um, it's it's also being understanding what that role is, and fiscal responsibility is key in that, and transparent government budgets. And while the county has amazing workforce overseeing the budgets and the allocations, and they have their processes in place that are very strict. Part of the checks and balances in administration are our commissioners. And so that fiscal responsibility is really a key part of that. And what I would like to dive into is where where are we cutting short? I understand that there's great concerns in our county about our budget and falling short. So where is that happening? What has been done in the past? And I know that with our county, we have about 50% of our lands are um, federally owned, and so that is a very unique, it's a unique challenge. And we have those ONC um, funds that are coming through, but we're not going to be getting the same timber receipts as we were in the 80s. That's just never coming back. And a little when I'm seeing the news come out about that, it's almost like there's this little bit of too extra excitement, like that's going to solve the budget problems, but it isn't. And so, looking at that fiscal responsibility, and are we paying all of our bills, and looking deeper into the PERS, and are we caught up with that? So, I'm understanding there might be some bills, and that can be a very complicated issue around that with this, what is owed to the state, and also around the dump. There's a lot of extra consulting fees and all of that. So while things are budgeted, uh, where are we overspending compared to where the budget is? Where are these big problems that are going to come down the hill while we might be um, hitting our budget, or they might be saying we're on track with that or tapping some of the reserves? There might be some ways that some of this information is a little buried, and I'll need to check that out and bring that up to the top and really bring it out of the closet and be transparent and solve the problems instead of pushing them under the carpet, because they got to get dealt with before it snowballs. And then right when these long over extended stays of these commissioners, and then step out when the headache really hits the fan, and other people are left to deal with it, and the taxpayers are left to deal with it. So that's number one. And then the other parts are the economic opportunities, and really being key, it's strategy and time right now. And while the current commissioners, there's one that has previous government experience, the other two are really resting on their laurels that they had business experience, which is not the same as running government. And you kind of get closer to running government when you're running nonprofits, which that was when I was executive director and running nonprofits where you're uh, working with federal funding and complicated programs with federal and county and state level programs. That kind of program and reporting and all of that is very similar to what government funding and budgets look like, and the demands of what that type of administrative skills that take to make it happen. Our county has grants and receives them, and so I understand how to maximize those opportunities and be at the right tables and at the right time to network and maximize opportunities that should be coming to our county instead of wait until people come knock on our door and present them. And one of those opportunities would be to be at the prosperity roadmap tables with the state of Oregon level. And so I don't know what's happening with our current commissioners and where they're networking, but I do believe that we should be at these types of networking meetings. And I understand that it's pretty much invitation only, but you also need to be building relationship and stewarding connections along the way to have your foot in the door and to meet those windows of opportunity when they present themselves. And I don't think that's happening. You have to have the ability to have vision and forward thinking and kind of just understand how to bring those administrative resources to the county. And I've seen a few that could be brought here, and it's just like they're being missed. The other part is workforce development and supporting families and rural communities. Some great concerns of mine are when you look at like the Ford Family Foundation's community need assessment and the CHI Mercy Foundation needs assessment in 2025, you start seeing the similar needs come through, that transportation is big and we're pulling way back on that, and resources and these types of barriers to services and progressing and are getting tighter and tighter, and I don't hear any urgency from our community leaders. It's almost like that's not our job. And same with homelessness. I've been a part of the work groups or trying to maybe be at the commission that just started up or the city council, and I'm not seeing our representatives, current commissioners. They might be watching them on the Zoom meetings. You know, I do that too, but like during like showing up, and this is a whole county. It's not, even though the resources are managed by city, council. Those resources are managed by them, but we are all partnering, and there's no boundaries to who it affects, like city or county, and it affects everybody. And so being able to use that position to leverage resources and maximizing partnerships and getting innovative and being at the networking at the right tables, that all brings prosperity, and those kinds of things aren't happening, at least in my observations. And I'm doing that and will bring that forward. Definitely, if I'm elected, that position will give me the opportunity to truly leverage the power of that position in all the ways. not just for me being that person that says, I just want to be the leader to be able to make the call, the decisions.
Lori, this is Betsy. There's a question from Larry. How would you insert a public forum item in all county board meetings? I think this was to address something I think you mentioned earlier about the public input.
Oh, I love that. Okay. So I was doing some reading on I don't remember the source, but the public forum does not have to be at the courthouse. We could do a public announcement and have our meetings throughout the county and set it up that way. It might be uncomfortable when to the people taking the meeting minutes or what, you just do your public announcement those so many days in advance, and we can have our meetings in other areas, like maybe once a year in the Reedsport area. I hear from that community that they feel they're left out a lot, and then when you are on the Zoom meeting, you have to go through a certain process, and it's not very easy to find out how that process is to be able to engage even virtually in those commissioner meetings at Wednesday at 9 o'clock. So that would be one way, is announcing the meetings and announcing the location, and we could make it where in various locations throughout the county sometimes. And I think that would be fair to do that, like on a couple times a year, you know, towards the coast and towards the South County, and make it available for other people to join in person, and definitely to add a public comments area on the agenda that has been taken off quite a while ago. Um, and there's nothing that's really sad. And I did talk to Tim Freeman about why isn't there public comments on that? And I'm very dissatisfied with the answer that was given, that you could talk to them individually before the meeting or after the meeting, and then you could put something on a piece of paper, and then they send it around to each of the three of them, and then they could decide whether they want to put it on an agenda or not. So that didn't seem very, that's a whole lot different than if I were just to go, hey, I'm going on this public comments and just putting what I want in front of the three of you, and it's on the record. It's a whole lot different. Does that answer your question, Larry?
Well, partially. Certainly, it's a good idea to have meetings around the county in a county this size. But I wonder if there isn't an association of counties or some state ordinance that wouldn't prescribe or strongly recommend that county board meetings include an open forum section.
Uh, so once it's, as I understand, and I'd have to really dive a little bit more into it, that it
Well,
meets minimum
you'll
standards.
have you actually have your opportunity, because next Sunday's SOPP is in honor of Sunshine Week, which is the FOIA law under federal law. We're going to talk about Oregon Public Meetings and Records law. I do want to let people know there is no constitutional right to speak at a public meeting of a body. So there's no right in Oregon to do so except for official hearings. And so that is the problem. And so there isn't a law that requires that. And in fact, it's only a public meetings law and an observation law under Oregon law.
And they meet the minimum requirements. Once again, minimum requirements. How about that? And that is that if there that public can speak to the agenda items. And it's before they speak to it too. So if somebody presents it and there's something that pops up from their presentation, you really don't have any room to go follow up with it, as far as what my observations have been. And yeah. And the what's really interesting is attending the city council meetings, which everybody there is volunteer on those council meetings. And those are examples of what a public meeting, and maybe, sometimes a little bit more overly done, but that is better than what we get from our paid county commissioners. And as far as I understand it, they get 118,000 a year each, and other people are, somebody shared more that they make more, but I don't know. That's all I know. And the quality of what we get from their meetings are like, I'll give an example. So the city council meeting had a contract that they spoke about in front of everybody that was like about a $500,000 contract. And they had the city council person, Nikki, or city person, Nikki Messenger, overseeing it. And they had the person who was in charge of the grant, and they were talking about the specifics of who funded it, what they needed, and what the contract was about, and why it was moving forward. And then the city council members asked a lot of questions, and the public's hearing it all unfold, and it was very thorough. And then, I don't know, a good half hour on it. And I definitely understood all the ins and outs of why that $500,000 contract was moving forward and what that was about. And we had a similar, like, not a similar contract, but $500,000 contract in front of the county commissioners for a consulting issue with the dump. And how Tim Freeman explained it was, there's a lot of who would know that there's a lot of complications with the dump besides it just being a big hole in the ground. And they put it forward that they want this $500,000 consulting contract to be approved, the person representing it in their department, and they all approved it. And that's how he explained it. There's a lot more to it than a big hole in the ground. So I think we all deserve more than that.
That's a very good point, Lori, because I actually track the city of Roseburg's city council, and they not only do they have public comment, general public comment, which is the thing that the Douglas County Commissioners have eliminated. They also they give you 6 minutes unless there's too many people, right? And it's actually a pretty extensive one. Plus, what always impressed me about the city of Roseburg is with the agenda, you can get a copy of the agenda on their website, and you can with Douglas County, but pretty much every document that they're sharing with city council is also in that agenda for the public to know. And one of the reasons, and we'll cover this in this SOPP next week about what happened, why the Douglas County Commissioners yanked the general comment section. I really don't believe Tim's explanation of it, just having watched it unfold and kind of know some of that background. But thanks for bringing that up, because one of the problems that caused that problem was the fact that our county commissioners are not transparent. And if they had been more transparent, people couldn't start imagining what they thought they were doing behind closed doors. And so, the whole thing could have been avoided, and it's more that authoritarian thing that really um, really is a problem, is that kind of mentality that, we know better. And that kind of, comes across not just in this, but also in the way they treat some of their constituents. Dane Zahner, I don't know if he wants to say it, but he said they do a great job in Roseburg, and Dane deals a lot with Roseburg. And now he's on the homeless commission. Yay, they definitely need to strategize better from the comments. And I would also say the reality is the county and the city are two different jurisdictions. It's not a hierarchy. The county isn't over the city. The city controls a ton of money, but in something like homelessness and other social problems, the substance abuse disorders, a variety of things, they really need to collaborate with each other. Even during COVID, the stories that people were telling me behind closed doors about, territorial fighting. We're talking about when people didn't even know what extent COVID was. And to me, it was like, this is all crazy. You people, you'll die fighting over, who has the authority or the right to do something. And anyway, I digress. Sorry.
Oh, it's all good. I do want to share that it was Tim Kress when he was the chair in the past that took the public comments off the agenda in the first place. And when Tim Freeman was the chair, that's when I was speaking to him about it. Um, and I expressed concern about why was that taken off, and he just said Tim Kress did it, and they stuck with it. It didn't matter that it was like, hey, why, and can you put it back? There was no, it's not going back on.
Yeah, and to actually, in best practices, Larry, to answer one of your questions is yes, it's usually recommended that governments actually allow it, even though they don't have to. And particularly small governments. It's really not the best practice because then you create this feeling that, you're not trusted. So if you wonder why the people don't trust county commissioners, they need to look in the mirror. I think they'll get the person who's responsible.
Yeah. I think that when I do hear the one of the commissioners speak in front, I can hear some of the symptoms of burnout and come through, and just kind of this frustration for the people that are frustrated with and distrusting of the government, instead of just leaning into it and hearing it and validating it and trying to address it, and instead of just being frustrated with it.
No,
I think,
Dane
I,
has a question for you.
yeah,
yeah, I was just gonna add. I mean, I think Roseburg does a really good job. I think it opens up transparency. I think what eight or communities that have that open forum, what they need to do better is like how to strategize some of those problems and that are brought up. Because it seems like in Roseburg, you hear a lot about homelessness and the gaps there. And it's like, how do you make, and I'm hoping that we can make that from the Homeless Commission. The mission is like, let's listen to the community members and their concerns around homelessness and kind of strategize how to deal with those. And so but I think it does create transparency, and they definitely do a good job. And I think our county needs to mimic that. And I also look at, Roseburg is in Douglas County. They have a buy-in, even though they have to work better with these communities, and they're not doing that. And, all these communities are within Douglas, but collaborating with the city governments to better align the strategies of dealing with situations. It could be homelessness. It could be what's happening. And, I mean, we're going to have a shortfall and it's going to be challenging. How do we work together better to strategize plans for the future?
yeah, it's not just doing these proclamations when it's election time, and lots of them, and putting them on the county website and the business chambers, and with the business leaders. I mean, doing these town halls have been amazing. And I think to your point, Dane, it's attending these city council meetings. And if I'm that person, I'm going to definitely try to make my way around to the Myrtle Creek, you know, council meetings and the Reedsport areas, just like at least once a quarter, or, just at least get out into some outskirts of the area, every other month somewhere out there, in our communities. The outlying communities all have unique culture and concerns, and there's a lot of closures, and we are needing to bring inspiration. And the more we become lackluster and dull, the more we're starting to close down more. And so we just need to be able to, with these ONC dollars coming and a little bit of relief maybe to our budgets, this is the most crucial time to be visionary and forward thinking, and gather our communities and tighten up with the leadership all over our community and get that going in whatever way that's supposed to look like, collaboratively, and bring all of these issues out of the closet, and trust in the process, and yeah, and leverage these positions of power for progress versus for your own status.
But I also want to commend you, Lori, already for what you're doing, because I've seen you in so many meetings, and that's great. And I think being present as often as you can, because it can get overwhelming. But I love your plan. That's a great plan.
Thank you so much, Dane. I have so many like one of my trainings, just it's not even just being present. And thank you so much for seeing me and wanting to be in these meetings, because I'll share what I was going to say a little bit ago too. But these meetings, the way I figure it is, even if I'm not selected to move forward, I've figured that I'm meeting other people that are leaders and caring about our community. And with the times that are coming down, we need to be tight as as communities. And I feel very much a part of, like, I built my career and skills and my personhood to be a person that's a bridge in different ways of being, and can do that, and I'm strong enough to do that, and talented enough to do it. And so it's not a loss. It's just a momentum. And I feel so happy when I see you and Bill there, and other people that want to be a part of that movement and feel it and build it together. And even this podcast is a part of that, and that we're practicing it, and it's like organizing, and we need to practice it when it's easy, and that we're getting ready to do it, so that way as times get harder, that we're in play. And so I wholeheartedly think that it was this push of people around me encouraging me to run is all a part of what I just said. And then also, I've on top of all my trainings and education, I'll just share that on the podcast is one of my trainings is Bridges Out of Poverty. And I trained the trainer Bridges Out of Poverty, and it was an extensive training. And I take that with me wherever I go because you address the socioeconomic classes of people of intergenerational poverty and middle class and of wealth and all the patterns of how we relate within those dynamics of when we're raised intergenerationally that way. And that's a bridge of how we communicate and how we relate in the workforce and as communities as well. So that helps me be able to communicate and kind of flex within those hidden rules of how we work with each other. So all that training and experience. I also have a legal assisting degree from one of the best, paralegal schools that you could get. One of my teachers was an attorney who taught at UC Davis and represented attorneys who for malpractice. So that was one of my teachers. And I had a couple teachers that said they wanted to hire me. So wherever I go, I move up. And then I have a bachelor's from Sacramento State University in career and technical studies with my focus in human services and my master's in science and psychology and leadership. And so all of that education, tons of training, and I continue to do that. I continue to go. Last semester, I went to Umpqua Community College because they offered I was able to get a free scholarship through a class for supported employment for people with disabilities. So I took that class at night. And so along the way, you can always keep learning and how to relate to people, to see people, to make way for them, for people that you're engaging with them to see themselves and grow and be their best selves. So I've done that type of training and work and practice and theory and in reality on an individual level and a group level in human relationships and partnerships and on an administrative level too. So I have a very unique and powerful skill set that I'm ready to bring in a very crucial time for Douglas County.
Does anybody else have any questions for Lorrie, real quick?
Sure, I'll ask her a question. And kind of, you touched on it a little bit, but looking at Alice and how our community is at about 50% poverty, what is your plan for Douglas County to combat that? Because that's a lot of poverty, and it presents a lot of challenges that our community has. And so I was just wondering what you would do to kind of combat that, or help make a dent in that big of a poverty level when 50% of your community falls into that.
Yeah, that makes it very difficult. I don't know that I can with all that needs to happen, right? And the workforce and the numbers are like at an all-time like the challenges nationally are really difficult right now too. And like at recession levels, unemployment numbers, and our unemployment numbers are higher here in Douglas County than the state numbers as well. And so I think being able to just be at the right tables again to make sure that even funding streams are happening to the organizations and the county that like federal dollars are cutting, and that basically organizations are having to sue and fight for their dollars to come from the feds that are due them from the past. And so a lot of that is happening right now, currently. So even that makes it harder on top of that challenge and that you're already talking about gaining. And then we've got timber, mills closing down and moving out and maybe opening in a couple of years. And, so, and nothing's going to come back to what they were in the 80s. And so one of the things that um, can happen is education or, what I was wanting to do a little bit of is these town halls, is to bring people in and start talking circles and networking, because one of the strengths of people that have been living in intergenerational poverty are being able to um, rely on each other during hard times. Like somebody has a car, somebody has gas money, and you know who has what and where, and you lean into each other as a tight community. So, one thing about that is somebody of middle class all of a sudden losing their job and having hardship, doesn't understand how to make their way, and somebody who's been living it with intergenerational poverty has those skill sets in place. And so having some talking circles, Bridges Out of Poverty has amazing templates on community building that help facilitate those processes, and we can exercise that type of experience and train. They're already doing these dinner experiences, and so building on what's working in some of these communities and really being purposeful about trying to maximize those gatherings and community and bring unity in those moments. So that is one way. And also around the food and food bank and transportation, with transportation being cut back so much, how can we collaborate around transportation? I know some of that is happening with the taxi services and some of the food bank, but how can we share in some of these responsibilities and barter and pull together our resources and organize in those types of ways to make sure that we're all taken care of? And we're going to need to be better at that, and also understand that people of middle class haven't had to make their way in surviving in those types of ways, tapping those resources of food banks or, you know, social services. And so helping people make their way and know that some of these resources exist as well, and being attentive to that need and communicating about it. So that is one way. So leveraging the strengths of those of our communities. And so that's one. And then also there has been, I've shared this in a couple of the town halls, and towards the end of last year, there was this amazing opportunity that USDA put forward that they would give 90% loan for employee owned. So a cooperatively owned mill that was closed down, lumber mills that are closed down. If a employee owned company wanted to open it back up and have some type of company out of it that is connected to lumber, that is local, and makes that happen, that the employees could do that. And so I was participant in this amazing workshop and took down, I don't know where my notes are, but took down all kinds of notes of this liaison who's done it back east, and they've done it in Canada, because they've had these towns die and they have these old mills out there. And so they weren't generating money and economy, and people weren't working, and so they generated their work. And so there are funding opportunities out there. I don't know if they are now under this administration and what's been happening, but as of 6 months ago. So once again, you need to know how to find the resources and be hungry for it and leverage it and want to be that bridge to connect the people. I know it's possible. And so why don't we have more employee-owned mills and these mills that are closed down and not being used? And it is possible. And people are doing it. Let's look at that and find somebody who's on fire for it, and let's connect people who are on fire and experts at these things. So that's another thing, is when you're networking and you're finding people who are good at certain things, and we're leveraging that talent and you know, resiliency, then we can make things happen.
Sorry, I'm trying to unmute myself right now. Well, I really appreciate you standing up. I mean, it's been few and far between for people to actually have the courage. So, we all applaud you here.
Thank you so much, Kevin. I mean, I truly feel encouraged. The people who have donated, and that keeps me going. That puts a little smile on my face, and it lets me know I'm not alone in that, as I've done some things to self-fund for my website, or buying brochures and stuff. So that definitely helps take the edge off of moving these efforts forward. And I'm inspired by our community and truly the kindness and that Douglas County people have. And I haven't felt anything but support from the people around me. And I know that the commissioners have that for themselves and their circle, but we've got to stop with that clicking and identity politics stuff. We've got to pick somebody who's going to make a difference, who can, especially now. And we got to get that message out. And I am that person that can do that.
Awesome. Well, does anybody else have any other questions before I had to hand this over to Betsy? And for anybody who's interested, Lorrie, how can that vote for Wick is your website people can go to donate or volunteer or find things about you right there in your username?
Yes, that is
Awesome.
voteforwick.com. And I have my email address on there, but my email is wick, the number 4, Douglas County @gmail.com. And anybody here, well, I don't want to put it on the website, I guess. I was just going to say, I'm okay with you guys calling me, but yeah, definitely connect with me on Facebook, and I'm okay if anybody here wants my phone number. You can get a hold of Kevin or Betsy or Dean or myself.
Well, thank you very much, Lorrie. Good luck. I do appreciate anybody who's willing to run, having, nudged a few people in my life to do so. uh, Even just running a campaign and not being the candidate, is a lot of hard work and a lot of energy. And we're not going to break what's happening in Douglas County until people step up. You may not know this, but 4 years ago there wasn't one Democrat who who ran. There were challengers for every single one of them, including Tom Kress. Um, but and with Boyce, and I want to just say a little bit, I'm going to segue into, I'm the candidate committee chair for the local Democratic Party, and one of the people who posts on the Democratic Party Facebook. Kevin and I are the primary people that do that for the party. And constantly, there's ongoing questions about splitting the vote, like you and Nick splitting the vote. And I just love the political science discussion about things that people hear terms about. But the reality, splitting the vote is when there is a reason to split a vote. And that happens when the two top candidates are really close together in their ability to garner votes. I'm going to give you an example, the crowd an example, Patrick Starnes, who we had on a couple of weeks ago for campaign finance reform, was able to convince Governor Brown, running for reelection, that he would drop out of the race and support her if she agreed to support the legislature actually putting campaign finance reform on the ballot so we could change the Constitution because we couldn't legally get campaign finance limits. He leveraged a very small group of votes to split a vote where she believed that she was at risk of losing the race. So that helped, that is splitting the vote that has a good outcome, because Patrick was never going to win the governor. He was actually running under the independent party ticket at the time. He was their nominee. But the reality is no one who has challenged Douglas County commissioners in the last couple of elections has come close to even being in a position where splitting the vote would matter. The reality is, if every single Democrat who voted in the last May election, primary election for county commissioner voted, you would get about 8,000 votes. Okay? You're not going to win the race. The reality is, unless we have people who can push those people into a general election and garner the support to maybe in that head off, one-on-one race, that maybe they can be dethroned. But even if they're not dethroned, it sends a powerful message that they're not going to just take it in May. And please don't get down on yourself if even that doesn't happen. The fact that they are concerned that you are running now is a good thing, because they're usually not very concerned. And so I'm gonna just, I don't know if you want to address it, but I want to know, why in the hell is somebody giving Tom Kress $150,000 for a campaign donation over a period of the last couple of years? I mean, I think there's 75,000 recently, and it's a winery
Anywhere.
that has a family tie here. From what the investigation I did, there is a family tie here, but they're located in Napa Valley.
They live here too, and I hear they're very generous family in Douglas County too, to nonprofits.
So why
So they
would
live
any
here
county
part-time too.
commissioner? Why would any county commissioner need that kind of money? And
Right, right.
definitely illustrative
I
of
feel that
why
way
can't.
about all their races,
Yeah.
elections. They're all that way. Lots of money. Even for the loser, Scarlato's here was $70,000 in the last commissioner election. Loomis had 1,400, and he stepped out to give Kress the votes or whatever. But I'm at $1,500, and but it's ridiculous, and it says a lot right there. And I'm around splitting the vote. My concern, what I hear people when they're saying that, because there is the four of us, and we're doing this very different than what's been done before, and I'm really okay. I really enjoy it actually because it kind of keeps us going and inspired, especially without a campaign manager and moving that forward. I think it's very personal. And when we're out in the community, the energy, the people are enjoying it. That there's all four of us together. Uh, we're really positive together as we're learning how to do this town hall together and address people. We have a flow with it, but since there's three openings, there's only Nick and myself that we're running against Cress, and Shane Kelly is running against Tim Freeman, and uh, Andrew Rosales is running against Chris Boyce. And so, as far as I'm concerned, I'm okay with that it's just one of us, or like that there's two of us. That's it. But if we all were paired up, that would be a little distracting, and wouldn't feel very good strategically. But since there's only one commissioner that we're doubled up on, I'm okay with that. Like, I really want at least two of us to win the commissioner race, and I'm going to pull my leadership role. Yes, practically Miss Betsy, it's going to be the same commissioners, but like, I am all gung-ho that we can make this change. Maybe people are just really ready for change, and hearing my message tonight, maybe it gets out further than what we really even know. And maybe other people are frustrated and hearing these messages and thinking these thoughts and ready for the right people too. And so we don't know. There's a lot of change going on in the air. And people are tired of the same old going too. And at the same time, it can look pretty good for some of the commissioners right now with the ONC being approved and riding on that, and politically, our county being a little bit more Republican leaning. But we are nonpartisan in this and moving that forward. And our town halls also are getting a lot of hits on the views on Facebook because they're being live streamed. And as far as the splitting the vote, I can see that if we're doing these presentations and we're like fishing in the same pond and fishing in the same magic little fishing holes, that you can be drawing from the same people, and that would split the vote that way when the pickings are slim. So we do need to be aware of that, but it's just one of the three candidates. And this is such a unique situation that we're doing right now, that we're practicing in how we're doing this. And so, yeah, it ended up being that way, that it worked out that way, and it is just one candidate versus all three. And there we go.
Well, actually, from the Democratic Party side, there's now two candidates because Kathy from the Reedsport is, entered the race and is a Democrat. And so from the Democratic Party's point of view, we don't endorse, they get our support. So, however, the four of you that are running together and have, for a while, work that out or don't, that's really, that's a situation you're in. But this is a numbers game. Chris Boyce, who had the least amount of votes 4 years ago, did win by that 50+1 margin. Okay. He did not get 51%, but he got 50 and some, 0.62%, I think it was. So he got more than just one vote over the 50%. That's a winner in the May primary. It's an absolute winner. You don't go to November. You don't have an opponent and you've won it straight out. They have done that in the last two elections they have been in. And this is a numbers game. It's math. It's really just straight math. It's not what people want. It's not even what I want. It is the reality of the numbers and what the numbers show and who votes in May. That's even more practically what it is. This used to be a partisan seat. until, if you ask some people, my Patrick Starnes, who's responsible for the nonpartisan effort that actually changed, to nonpartisan races about 20 years ago. But it's nonpartisan is more democratic, but I will also tell everybody, and I think I told you this, and everybody else who's running with you, if we are nonpartisan races, it shouldn't be that way. But as soon as somebody files, both the Democrats and the Republicans know exactly what party you are in, and they
Yeah.
share that with their members. And we do a slate card. The Democrats do a slate card, and we're going to tell everybody who's on the ballot, whether it's in a partisan or non-partisan. In a partisan race, that's easy. In a nonpartisan race, we're also going to tell you who all the Democrats are. That's called a slate card. Everybody does it. They've been doing it as far as I can remember in my whole life. That's what parties do. There's a fix for that. It's not in this election. And it really is to do away with all partisan primaries, that people don't run on the ballot as affiliated with a party. That happens in Vermont. It's why Bernie Sanders is a U.S. Senator from the state of Vermont. So,
Mm.
and so the reality is the voting system matters. And the real change is going to be coming when the two top vote getters, regardless of party affiliation, are at the top of the ballot, right? And there's always going to be our current system under the law provides for that 50.1% in a nonpartisan race in Oregon is a winner. Doesn't have to be that way, but it's the law. So right now it has to be that way. So it really is just the numbers. And, I know it gets, complex in some people's mind, but it's a really, that Republicans have twice as many registered voters as we do, as the Democrats do. There are twice as many non-affiliated voters as there are Democrats. There are not quite as many as the Republicans in Douglas County, but the reality is they're the least likely to vote in a May primary. So it's really this mathematical data that you gather to determine the odds. Can people break the odds? Yes. You break the odds by even having the message out there. And that is a good thing for you and all the other candidates. When your voice about what change needs to happen, that's a critical voice to have, not just be poking the eye at the county commissioners, which, by the way, most of the people who ran against Chris Boyce last time, that's what they spent, is poking the eye at the county commissioner. So anyway,
I'm
and that's,
hearing people say they're tired of that too. They're not wanting to have a lot of that
I think,
going.
Dane, did you want to ask a question or make a comment? Uh,
No, it was I forgot what I was going to ask, but I just appreciate you, Lorrie, for doing what you're doing and putting yourself
yeah.
out there. I appreciate all four of you for putting yourselves out there. Now there's two more, so that's even more awesome.
Thank you. I'm feeling a little like I would be hesitant to try to change or shift what flow we've been having on town hall. I don't mind like if people want to be in the audience and stuff, but to be like you're running against one of us versus the incumbents, or trying to kind of draw from the audience votes that from that audience that we're speaking to, that starts feeling like splitting the little votes that are there a little bit. So I'm just going with the energy of the town halls and how that feels. And the way I describe it is I'm okay with, I would co-sign that the people that I'm sitting next to are there to make a difference, and I know that, and I'm fully behind them and would vote for them, and I could sit next to them and be, very proud of that, versus having it be that somebody's a party, one party or another. And I feel very strongly about that.
No, I do remember what my question was, and it came up from the other night in Canyonville. It's just like, since the news review doesn't publicize some of these remarkable things that are going on, would it be equitable to do like press releases and release that, send those out to multiple parties like this? I really think they need to look at these donations from this family from California that also lives here on the wineries. I think that's really challenging in a small community, but just, what they did with the land and giving the land to a nonprofit, I mean, that to me, that's challenging. Why not give it to, they have land inside closer to Roseburg that they could give to and donate to a nonprofit for a homeless shelter. I mean, there's just so many, but I think we know the news review is not going to cover these. Would that be something that we could do, Betsy, as a group, is like do some press releases and try to draw in some different broadcasting, different newspapers that might grab onto these things, because some of these are really challenging, you know?
The League of Women Voters is also going to have a facilitate. They're going to invite all of the commissioner candidates and commissioners to the fairgrounds on April 23rd from 6 to 8 at the Cascade Room at the Fairgrounds Conference Hall. And so there'll be a debate, and each person will get a minute each, and the news review will be there. And the news review did cover our first town hall. That was really nice. And I felt that they were fair and supportive of what we got going. And it was actually very nice of them to ask candidates questions and put our answers in the paper and in our pictures. That was nice too. So I felt like that was good. And to your point, Dane, that is a good thing to want more. But they will be there for April 23rd as well.
And an answer certainly wouldn't hurt for even the Democratic Party, sending out a press release of all the town halls you've had and links to where people could get them if they would publish them. But also even sending it to, KLCC or Jefferson Public Radio, right? They might be, you might get airtime to do that, and including as Southern Oregon Progressive Podcast, we haven't done any kind of outside advertising, but that's actually not a bad idea either. People want to hear what you guys have to say. That's one of the rationales for even doing this, online, is because that's a forever thing. And since you've been recording those town halls, I mean, that's forever also. The problem with in-person meetings is, you think about, the population of 110,000 in the county, how many people are at town halls, right? And unless they're online or something's online, that you theoretically can exponentially grow, particularly from those town halls. So, yeah, that makes sense to do something like that. So,
One of the town halls, 300 views afterwards. Some are
yeah.
better than others, like as in the quality. I feel like one or two I was all but you get warmed up to it, and yeah, sometimes we're not always our best too, but that is forever. And putting them at maybe Shane Kelly has been putting them live, so maybe you guys can help us figure out how to put our best few out there, that we all feel like is kind of our top ones, each of us, and put them out there. And like, I don't know if you guys advertise it or how to get it out there further. Maybe send it out to your guys' email listservs and ask your listservs to send them out to your people. But that's the only way we're gonna, like you're saying, Betsy, get those numbers games going.
Well, then I would suggest, yeah, you certainly can send us a list of, of the videos that you want, where the I'm going to say Earl, and that's URL for people who don't know who Earl is. Um, and we can just push those out there, yeah, in a variety of ways. and anybody who watches this can do the same, right? If people want to know what you guys are about, and particularly the interesting idea of running together and being supportive of doing that, particularly when you're fighting an uphill battle. There's a similar strategy among the Democrats vying for the Democratic Party nomination in Congressional District 2, because who they're going to face off with, it's almost, it's like an insurmountable hurdle. Their data of how many votes they get compared to the incumbents, is no better than ours on a congressional district level, though. So, but the idea is good, right? There's no need for this adversarial when the big problem, I think, that probably motivated most people to run for county commissioner, whether it's the four of you or others, is because they're sick and tired of the ones we have. So, do we have anything else anybody wants to talk about tonight? Kevin?
I personally don't have anything right now on the agenda. I just wanted to remind everybody of our election coverage things, and hopefully we're going to be expanding out just besides Douglas County. I think it would be really interesting to go even farther south because I know they were doing some recalls and stuff down there. So stay tuned, and thank you everybody for coming out, and thank you, Lorrie, for running. It's truly been a treasure to get to meet you and convince you to run.
Thank you guys. You guys are the best. Truly, I'm inspired by my community, which is all of you, and I'm just looking forward to growing stronger together in that. And it's my honor, my pleasure, and thank you so much for your encouragement and support, everybody. It's just pushing me out of my comfort zone and letting me know that I can and we will. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's always good to be pushed out of one's comfort zone. Then you're alive, right?
Yeah.
So, okay. So we're glad to help you do that. Thanks for running, Lori.
Thank you.
All right.